Dear students, welcome to this presentation of Unit 11, the Catholic Monarchs and the Age of Discoveries. As this is a long presentation, I've divided it into two parts. This first part is about the Catholic monarchs, while the second one will be about the Age of Discoveries. This is a long video, so you aren't required to watch it in just one sitting. You can distribute your own time. And as this is a pre-recorded video, you can rewatch it, you can pause it, you can organize as you prefer. This includes the notes, the definitions, and the explanation you need to know about this unit. In the first place, this unit will treat the happenings that took place in Spain, or what we call nowadays Spain, in the 15th century. Time of the Catholic monarchs, which is the topic of this video. The Catholic monarchs, as you know, were Isabel the first of Castilla and Fernando II of Aragon. You can see in your book and in other sources that the names can be translated, but for now we will use the Spanish name for them. These two monarchs were extremely important for the history of Spain, as they got married and they united both of their kingdoms. For that reason, the symbols they normally use include knots and other representation of ties between the people and the monarchs. And also, their motto was Tanto Monta, that means that they both had the same importance. Isabel as Queen of Castilla and Fernando as King of Aragon. When they got married, both of the territories unified in some sense. They did not become the same kingdom. They remain as separated kingdoms. This is very important. For that reason, as we said in the exam preparation, we talk about the Spanish monarchy. We won't talk about Spain in this unit. Spain didn't exist yet. There was a group of kingdoms that had the same monarchs. Isabel could rule in Castilla, and after she got married with Fernando, she could rule in Aragon too. And the same happened with Fernando. He could rule in both Castilla and Aragon, but the kingdoms were different, with different symbols, with different currency, and even different languages. Because, for example, in the Kingdom of Aragon, they spoke Catalan. This is the coat of arms of the Catholic monarchs that represent the castles for Castilla, the lions for Leon, and the bars for Aragon and Sicilia. This shows the union of the two most important dynasties, the two most important monarch families in the Iberian Peninsula. It also has the eagle as a symbol of the Catholic monarchs, and these two symbols, the yoke and arrows, el yugo y las flechas. These are due to an old play on words. When they got married, nobles usually took as a symbol something that represents their husband or wife. And after they got married, Isabel adopted as symbol some flechas that started with an F like Fernando, and Fernando adopted as symbol a yoke, a yugo, that had as initial letter a Y, because in that time Isabel was written with a Y. Then here we've got the eagle as symbol of Saint John, the Saint Patron of. This is then a dual monarchy, a double monarchy. That means that as they govern as a royal couple, they have two separated kingdoms, Castilla and Aragon. So they got married, but their kingdom didn't become just one kingdom. They remained separated. They got married in 1469, and they had to surpass some problems, especially the civil war between Joanna, Juana, and Isabel. This is because the origin of both of them. The king was Henry IV, Enrique IV, king of Castilla, that had a daughter, Juana, but according to what the court says, she wasn't the legitimate daughter of Henry VIII, but she was the daughter of a noble that was the lover of the queen called Beltrán de la Cueva. In that way, Juana was called Juana la Beltraneja, as to say daughter of Beltrán. That means that many nobles didn't accept Juana, as they considered that she wasn't the official heiress to the crown, so they supported Isabel. Isabel wasn't the daughter of the king, she was the sister of the king, so she was the aunt of Juana. There was a civil war between the supporters of Juana and Isabel, and finally Isabel, of course, won the war. That means that she obtained a great power over the nobles. This was a dynastic union, a union of dynasties, royal families. Actually, both of the Catholic monarchs were from the same family. They were part of the Trastámara family. They were cousins, actually. And when they got married, they created a great, strong dynasty that ruled over the Iberian Peninsula. This is what we call the Spanish monarchy. Then they tried to expand in the Iberian Peninsula and outside this Iberian Peninsula. Here we can see some symbols of the kingdoms the Catholic monarchs rules over, such as Aragón, Sicilia, Sardinia, and Galicia. The different kingdoms had their own institutions. For example, those are the Cortes in Catalonia with Fernando II, King of Aragon, that were the ones needed for rule this specific area, this specific part of the country. Then we said that they tried to unify the whole Iberian Peninsula. But at this time in the Iberian Peninsula there were other kingdoms, such as Granada, ruled by the Muslims. It was the last Muslim territory. They also had wars outside, for example in Italy, where they lead different campaigns in order to fight the French. Here we can see a painting of Gonzalo Fernández de Córdoba, the great captain, Gran Capitán, as the leader in Italy. And this is a painting of the surrender of Granada. Here we can see La Alhambra with Isabel, Fernando, and the last king of Granada, Boabdil the Minor, Boabdil el Chico, that surrendered to the Catholic monarchs in the year, very important and that we already know, 1492, which is also, as you know, the year of the discovery of America. This is a map of the Iberian Peninsula in time of the Catholic monarchs. We can see that Castilla is the most important kingdom in this time, is very large, and for that reason there was a civil war in order to see who was the leader of that area, because it was the most important and the richest of the Iberian Peninsula. And then Aragon, which is not as important, but they expanded through the Mediterranean to the Balearic Island and even to Italy. These two kingdoms got married. Castilla and Aragon were together through the marriage of their leaders, which did not mean that they unified, but they were together when talking about wars and politics and so on. Then, to continue expanding through the Iberian Peninsula, they conquered Granada, and then they conquered Navarra. Granada in 1492 and Navarra in 1512. But it was incorporated in 1515, which is the date that actually is in your book. Then Aragon expanded through the Mediterranean Sea, And through the north, they conquered Rousillon and Sardinia from the French, and Castilla expanded through the Atlantic Ocean to the Canary Islands and to America. Then they also established alliance with other countries, with other Portugal. So, for the Iberian Peninsula, they unificate or try to unify the Iberian Peninsula, especially the lands that we nowadays call Spain. Granada in 1492, Navarra in 1515, and they did not conquer Portugal, but they established alliance with them. The daughter of the Catholic monarchs got married to the Prince of Portugal, and that means that the great grandson of the Catholic monarchs, the great grandson of the Catholic monarch Philip II, Felipe II, became the King of Portugal later, due to the inheritance of all of these territories. They also established a very powerful foreign relationship. That means international relations. For example, they created embassies. These posts established in foreign land where the diplomats have relation with other kingdoms. This is the oldest embassy in the world, which is the Spanish embassy with the Pope in the Vatican, which it still is nowadays, and is the embassy of Spain with the Pope, and also with the Order of Malta. Is shared with both of them. Here we can see the Catholic monarchs, an ideal representation of the monarchs receiving ambassadors from the north of Africa. They also have very important spies. The subterfuge and the ways to obtain information were very important in this time. This is a book of codes to try to codify the secret messages. And also they had wars. This is a fortress in Italy built in this star shape typical of this time, trying to deflect the fire of the cannons and to offer more surface for the firearms. This is a diagram of the relation of the Catholic monarchs. They had, they unified the territories, then they have royal alliance, so marriages with Portugal, with England, and with the Holy Roman Empire. Actually, with Austria, that was the one that controlled the Holy Roman Empire. And they conquered military Naples, so the south of Italy. Here we can see the Aragonese troop entering even to Constantinople in the Middle Ages, and how they expand through the north of Africa. Here we can see the Cardinal Cisneros with his coat of arms, which is nowadays the coat of arms of the University of Alcalá, that was founded by him. And here we can see Pedro de Estopiñán, that was the conqueror of Melilla. He's a particular man because he was an accountant that worked for a noble, but his ship was captured by pirates. He fought against them, he threw the pirate captain to the sea, and was able to make all the pirates surrender. Then he discovered that he loves fighting much more than he likes accountants, so he became a conqueror and actually conquered Melilla. And of course, also in the year 1492, they reach America. We can see them with the symbol of the cross, as they were the defenders of Christianism, and with the flags of the Catholic monarch. They had an extensive network of relationship with other areas, especially these marriages. For example, here we can see Catherine of Aragon, Catalina de Aragon, that was the Queen of England. She married the King of England that we already know, which is Henry VIII. The creator of the Anglican Reformation, the man that tried to separate from his wife. Well, his wife was the daughter of the Catholic monarchs. And here we can see the areas of the Catholic monarchs, the one that will become the Queen of Castilla and Aragon, which is Juana I of Castilla, Archduchess of Austria, Duchess of Burgundy, Queen of Castilla and Aragon after the death of the Catholic monarchs. She got married with the Archduke of Austria, and for that reason she became an extremely important woman. And her son, which was Carlos I, became emperor and started what we call the Spanish Empire. Here we can see the family tree of the Catholic monarchs and how their son got married with an Austrian princess, their daughter with an Austrian prince. Here she is Juana de Castilla, the mother of Charles I, Carlos I, the emperor, and then Philip II, the one that will become King of Portugal. Here we can see another daughter, Isabel, that got married with the King of Portugal, and Catalina, that got married first to Arthur and then Henry VIII, King of England. This is the reason of why Charles I could inherit finally Austria, Castilla, and Aragon, and Philip could also inherit Portugal and even England, not at the same time. Here we can see a map in different colors. We've got the different relations they have with different countries. And we can see in green all the countries they have political alliance with. For example, Austria, we said they have relation with the Holy Roman Empire because the kings of Austria rule over the empire. In green, we can see the areas they acquire military. Granada, Navarra, Naples, and places in the north of Africa. And finally, of course, America. Here we can see the foreign policy of the Catholic monarchs. Remember, foreign policy are the international relationship. This it says they recovered the Rousillon and Sardinia, which are the north of Catalonia, from the French. Then they won in Naples against the French as well. They conquered Melilla, Oran, Algiers, and Bujia in the north of Africa to stop the pirates. As they have a very important trade in the Mediterranean, they wanted to stop the Barbary pirates, the ones, Muslim pirates from the north of Africa that tried to capture their ships. And for that reason, they conquered these cities in order to have bases in order to stop the pirates. They also conquered Canary Islands, they discover America, and they establish marriage alliance with the different countries that we have said: England, Portugal, Austria, etc. They, as they were expanding through the different areas, they also wanted to expand their power internally, so inside the country. For that reason, they will control the military orders. Military orders are these societies of knights that defend a special area. They were created during the Reconquista to fight the Muslims, and they have a great power. Here we can see the symbols, the crosses, as they were religious orders of Santiago, Calatrava, Alcántara, and Montesa, the four most important military orders in Spain. Other famous military orders are the Templars, for example, or the Hospitalier Knights. These orders had a great power, and for that reason they were controlled by the king. Here we can see in the Meninas how Velázquez had this symbol of the cross of Santiago, because he was a knight of the Santiago. And here we can see a painting of Alfonso XIII, king of Spain in the 20th century, that he is carrying the four symbol of the four Spanish military orders. This is because the king became the leader of this order as a way to control the power of the nobles. Here we can see a coin from the time of the Catholic monarchs, which represent Fernando and Isabel. First Fernando, then Isabel, but then the coat of arms is in the opposite way. First the territories from Isabel, and then the territories from Fernando. We can see that it has the castles, the lions, the bars, the symbol from Castilla, León, Aragón. And also here it has the symbol of Granada. It's difficult to say, but here, nowadays in the coat of arms of Spain is as well, is the symbol of Granada. There are no symbols for Navarra, so that means that this is previous to the conquest of Navarra. This is another coat of arms. This is the guion de la Guardia Vieja, so the flag of these old knights from the time of the Catholic monarchs, that shows again the same symbols, and here are the granadas for Granada. There are no reference to Navarra, that as you know are chains, so this is before the conquest of Navarra. This is between the conquest of Granada in 1492 and the conquest of Navarra in 1550. Here we can see these soldiers of the Guardia Vieja and the carrier of the royal flag. And this, the Santa Hermandad, Holy Brotherhood, as is in your book, they are very important. This is what we could call nowadays a police. They were the ones that protect the roads and the land of the country from the criminals. They are very important because before that, in the Middle Ages, there were some hermandades, brotherhoods, that were at the orders of some cities that control the surrounding area of that city, or some groups of wards that were controlled by a noble. So they imposed the laws of that noble or that city, different laws in the different parts of the country. But with the Catholic monarchs, the Santa Hermandad is created, meaning that the same group could control all the territory. It's a way to organize the laws and to impose more power over the nobles, over the cities, over the different territories, and to extend the rule of the king and queen. So Castilla, to obtain more power over the nobles, they will cut the traditional sources of power of the nobles. How do they obtain power? From the lands, the political power, and the military power. What do the Catholic monarchs do? They stop all of these powers. They limited the amount of land that could be granted to the nobles. Remember that during the Reconquista, the nobles could obtain more and more land. This stopped. They were forbidden to participate in councils, so in politics, in some areas of politics. and they couldn't be the generals of their own armies. They could be generals of the armies of the king, but they couldn't have their own armies for themselves. The power of the noble did not disappear, of course, but it was reduced a lot. Then they ruled thanks to some institutions, such as the Consejo de Castilla, Council of Castilla, which is the one that controls the land. It has the executive power, so to speak. Then the Contaduría Real, so the royal counts, it's the one that had the economic power. It controlled the taxes, the payments, and so on. And the Real Audiencia, which is the one that had the judicial power, that judge the criminals. Then they had corregidores, which were in the cities. The cities had a mayor and some regidores, that were the ones that helped the mayor. And for that reason, the kings start naming corregidores to go to the cities and to be sure that everything was done according to the laws of the king. So all of this was in order to control, to extend the royal power. They also had a professional army, so avoiding the nobles to have their own armies, and they created the Santa Hermandad to control the roads and lands. The economic circumstances in Aragon were a bit different. For example, they had the peasants in a very, very bad situation because they were submitted by the nobles that could rule over them almost completely. For that reason, it was created the judgment of Guadalupe, la sentencia arbitral de Guadalupe, in order to abolish these bad practices. Aragon, unlike Castilla, had also very important cities, and these cities were always ruled by the same people, very important families of the nobility or the bourgeoisie that control all the power. Trying to avoid this, saculation was created. Insaculación in English literally means put in a sack. They use small balls like this to put on them the names of the people that wanted to rule that city. Then they put all the balls in a bag, they choose one randomly, and they were the leaders, the ones that were whose names appear in the balls that were out of the bag. This is a way to divide the power in a city and to avoid to the same people to always have the power. So in Aragon, they tried to control the power of the nobles, creating the Sentencia Arbitral de Guadalupe that abolished the malos usos, the bad practices. Then they created insaculación to control the cities and tried to expand the power of the kings in general. But they couldn't expand the power of the king as much as in Castilla, because Aragon had this system which is called pactismo. Pactismo, obviously, came from the word pact, meaning that they had to reach agreements with the different powers. For example, while in Castilla there was just one Cortes, Cortes de Castilla, that controlled all the territory, because it was a unified territory, Aragon was divided in different kingdoms. When we are talking about the crown of Aragon, we are actually talking about the kingdom of Aragon, the kingdom of Valencia, the kingdom of Mallorca, so the Balearic Islands, and the county of Barcelona, so Catalonia. Those territories, except in Mallorca, had their own cortes. Remember that the cortes were these assemblies in which the representative of the land meet to decide the different aspects about economy, politics, and so on. That means that the king had to negotiate to reach agreements with these cortes and with these particular powers in order to take their politics and to impose their power. So he didn't have an absolute power. He could not impose his authority over the land. For that reason, we said that it was a system called pactismo. In Castilla, they have this authoritarian monarchy, but in Aragon they did not have that. They have this system, pactismo. As they were expanding their power in the political aspects inside the Iberian Peninsula and with other countries, they also tried to impose their power in the religious areas. For that reason, the Spanish Inquisition, La Inquisición, was created. Inquisición, was a religious tribunal that judged the crimes against the faith. So it wasn't a tribunal that could judge everybody or every criminal. It was only against the people that broke some religious laws. Here we can see an auto de fe. An auto de fe is a judgment made by the Inquisition. We can see here on top to the Sumo Inquisidor, the leader of the Inquisition, and then the people that is being punished, carrying these robes that are called San Benito, like in the idiom cargar el San Benito a alguien. It's like that. It's a way to publicly punish someone or directly to be burned at the stake. This is a painting of the 19th century showing how many centuries it lasted, where some people punished by the Inquisition to be flagellated, to receive, to be whipped. For that reason, they are topless, and for that reason, they carry these San Benitos as a public shame. They were carried throughout all the city. The definition of the Tribunal of the Inquisition, Tribunal de la Inquisición, is this judicial organism. They have the judicial power. It was a tribunal, a court of the Catholic Church established in Spain in the 15th century, so the time of the Catholic monarchs, that judge the suspects of heresy. This is very important. The Tribunal of the Inquisition only acts against the heretics. Heretics were those people that were Christians but had separated from their faith. This is important because the Tribunal of Inquisition had no power against the Jews, against the Muslims, against people of other religions, only against the people that were Baptist, so that were Christians that separated from the rules of the Catholic Church. They could go against the Protestant, for example, or people that weren't Protestant but didn't follow all of these rules. But the trick is that as the Catholic monarchs were very religious and they wanted to extend their power over the peninsula, they wanted religious uniformity, meaning that they want to all their kingdom to have just one religion, Catholicism. For that reason, they forced everybody to convert to Catholicism. The Inquisition punished the heretics, the conversos, and the moriscos. This is related with these two happenings, the expulsion of the Jews and the expulsion of the Muslims. The Jews in 1492, as you can see is a very important date, were expelled from Spain or they were forced to convert. For that reason, the Jews that decide to remain in Spain and to change their religion were called conversos. On the other hand, the Muslims were forced to convert in 1502. At the beginning, they were promised to, to respect their religion. When Granada was conquered in 1492, the Muslim population in Granada was promised that they could keep the religion, but later, 10 years later, the Catholic monarch changed their mind and decide that every Muslim need to convert or to leave the country. The Muslims that convert and change their religion were called moriscos. But there were suspects that the Jews and the Muslims, the conversos and the moriscos, didn't totally change their religion, but they continue practicing the religion they were used to. And for that reason, the Inquisition persecuted them uh, at a great extent. Here we can see the Catholic monarchs with the leader of the Inquisition, Torquemada, throwing a cross, trying to make the Catholic monarch to expel the Jews. Here we can see a Jew asking the Catholic monarchs to stay in Spain. This is the law that finally expelled the Jews from Spain, signed in Granada in 1492, meaning that they have actually conquered the city, and with a royal sale and the same king and queen. This is the text. So of course, Spanish said that they ordered that all the Jews of any age in Spain need to live with their sons and daughters, servants, and so on, and they could not return to the lands, and if they enter to the land, they will be put to death. So it was a very strong measure. That means that many Jews left the country to other areas, especially to the Muslim territories, as the Muslims in those times were much more tolerant with other religions, especially within. This was not something from the Catholic monarch, but generalized in the Christian Europe. We can see how the different territories expelled the Jews, especially to the Netherlands, Poland, and especially the Muslim territories. And as a curiosity, we can see how there are groups uh, heirs from these Jews that had to leave Spain in the 15th century that still have a language called Ladino-Sephardi, which is very similar to the medieval Spanish they talk in that time. This is a newspaper from Israel that we can actually understand because it's pretty much Spanish, but an old-fashioned Spanish with a different spelling. Here we can see drawings of the moriscos, how they had different customs and clothes, and for that reason they could be easily recognized. This is the most important economic activity in Castilla, which is the transhumance livestock farming. The carried of sheep through the land in order to obtain wool. Of course, the meat and milk from the sheep were also used, but it's especially the wool as the most important wood, most important merchandise in that time. Everybody had clothes made up of wool, from the kings to the peasants, so it was very profitable. And livestock farming was controlled by La Mesta. La Mesta is a guild. If you remember from previous unit, a guild was an association of people from the same job, normally traders or artisans. In this case, the guild, the Mesta, is a guild of livestock farmers that were transhumans, meaning that they moved their flocks of sheep from one part of the kingdom to the other through very long roads called the cañadas, and they even had the power to build bridges and to protect their roads even with their own armies. And they also have the right to carry a coat of arms, like here. They have the castle from Castilla, the lion from León, and these two livestock animals as a symbol of their. There were also industry in Castilla, not a lot, but some of these. This is a batan, the most important industrial device in this time, that is used to hit the wool with these very big hammers in order to make it thinner and create it fabrics of a better quality. Here we can see the cañadas, the routes that these flocks of sheep follow through Castilla. Again, with the lands of the military orders. And as we have said, the transhuman livestock farming controlled by the Mesta in order to obtain wool. And what did they do with this wool? They sell it. It was exported to Flanders and England, so to the north through the Cantabric Ocean, the Cantabric Sea. Sorry. So due to that, the textile industry, so the making of fabric, was very scarce. That means that there wasn't a lot because they didn't work with the wool in Castilla, but they sell it to other countries, and then these countries create very rich fabrics with that. There was some other kinds of industries such as goldsmithing and ceramics in different parts of Castilla. And very important, the trade was carried out in fairs, which were itinerant markets that moved through the country. And they also create an institution, the majorat. Majorat is a law, a political institution, an economical institution that said that all the lands of a noble family need to remain in the older son of that family, meaning that they couldn't separate the lands, they couldn't distribute the wealth of that family, neither between the different sons and daughters. Everything need to pass integrally to their older son. This is a way to maintain the power of the most important families, to avoid it to be distributed, to avoid two new families to rise, to prevent these lands from being sold or gifted to other people. It locked the land and the wealth of the noble families that need to be passed to the older son. This is the definition of fair. Remember that we need to know these definitions. They were itinerary markets from medieval origins where national or international merchants gathered in some specific dates. So at some specific points of the year, the market came to the town. Actually, nowadays, many of the dates of the holidays in villages and towns remember the date where these fairs established in the Middle Ages. It was normally the only way the people of that town had to obtain products from other lands, other kingdoms, and so on. They sell very exotic products, wealthy items, and so on. This is a map that we already know. Castilla and Aragon unified through the marriage. In this case, it says 1479. They got married in 1469, but 10 years later they established their power. They cemented their power because the civil war in Castilla was won and Fernando became the king of Aragon after the death of his father. Because when they got married, the Catholic monarchs weren't king and queen yet. They were prince and princess. Then they conquered Navarra, they conquered Granada, and as we know, they established alliance with Portugal and so on. And very important, Aragon expanded through the Mediterranean, the Balearic Island, Sardinia, Naples, Sicily, and cities in the north of Africa to stop these Northern African pirates, and Castilla expanded through the Atlantic Ocean to the Canary Islands and later to America. As Aragon had this Mediterranean empire, they could trade through the Mediterranean. Remember that from the time of the Greeks and Romans, the Mediterranean was the wealthiest sea in Europe and one of the wealthiest trade areas in the world. So they could use it for commerce. And that made the cities in Aragon very powerful, such as Barcelona and Valencia. This is a lonja. Lonja is a market. This is the Lonja de la Seda, which was the market of the silk, from the silk route that came from Asia. Here we can see how Aragon took some measures, such as the abolition of certain feudal rights, which was made with the judgment of Guadalupe, so the Sentencia Arbitral de Guadalupe. They had protectionism, that means that they protect their own merchancies. They put taxes to the products that came from other areas in order to make the people to buy the Aragonese products. They had a powerful textile industry, especially in Catalonia. They have a powerful Mediterranean trade carried out in Valencia and Barcelona. And as it was a kingdom of cities, the bourgeoisie was very important in that kingdom. That was the end of the unit, and here we can see the homework we need to do before the 1st of April. You have plenty of time. It's just a brief test, 30 questions. It's, of course, in the Aula Virtual, as everything, and a text commentary of the Segovia Pacts, La Concordia de Segovia, which is also in the Aula Virtual. This text is in Spanish, as it was signed by the Catholic monarchs. It was a very important document after the war with Portugal that established the power that the different people, the king and queen, had in Castilla and Aragon. It's an agreement of how they will distribute their country. When you see that text, you will notice that it has been written in a strange manner, as it is Spanish, but it's old Spanish. It is almost medieval Spanish, and the spelling rules weren't the same. It had a lot of what we could consider typos, but it was the way of writing in that time. If you read it carefully, you won't have any problems understanding that text. And of course, if you have any question from this video, from the homework, or from anything, please write me an email to the direction, the address that you know, which is prof.jaime ariasjimenez@gmail.com. That was all. So thank you very much for watching. And if you have any doubts, any question, don't hesitate in writing me. Thank you very much.